Today I want to talk about the aftermath or what occurred in Houston, Texas last week with Hurricane Beryl. I've read reports, the national weather forecasters are saying up to 25 hurricane strength storms this year. It's a crazy number. Beryl happened, way earlier in the season than what's normally expected. Although we're in California where we don't experience hurricanes, even though last year in San Diego we had one, which is crazy. We have clients in many parts of the country, Texas, Florida, even up the Northeast, the East Coast, that experience hurricanes. As an insurance agency that focuses on business insurance, I want to give you some insights into business insurance coverage to make sure that you're covered in the event of a hurricane. I'm going to give you 7 coverages that you should focus on when you read over your policy to ensure that you have them so that you don't have any surprises if a hurricane comes into your area. Again, with Hurricane Beryl, one of the biggest problems that came of that hurricane was the extended period of time without power, which is a scary situation. Of course, flooding, excessive rains, and wind with property damage and damages to real property are a problem. But the power outage was the main story in this case. Making sure you have preparation ready, plenty of water, plenty of food, maybe a backup generator, enough medications in case you can't get to the store to refill during flooding or whatever it may be. Going into the next segment, talking about business insurance, and clients that have businesses in areas affected by hurricane, and some things to look out for in the event that you have either a direct damage caused by a hurricane, or in the case like we saw in Houston, Texas with Hurricane Beryl, power outages that could potentially impact your business because you can't run without power, right? Starting with the most obvious, which is the coverage for the hurricane itself, right? We're starting to see in areas of high hurricane probabilities. This could be, of course, in Houston, which is in parts of Texas that get those hurricane force winds and rains and storms. Florida is a big one. Wind and hail kind of go hand in hand in this exclusion. But wind and hail exclusions on standard policies, which would cause you to have to go out and buy what's called a DIC, or a difference in conditions policy, to cover the peril of hurricane, wind, and hail. So ensure that your policy has wind covered. And if it doesn't, you need to talk to your insurance professional, your insurance agent, your insurance broker about a DIC, difference in conditions policy, to cover the wind, damage caused by wind as a result of the hurricane. The next one is flood. When you have storm surge, excessive amounts of rain that causes floods, surface level flooding, you need to have a flood policy. Most insurance policies are going to exclude flood. Now, there might be some endorsements on a policy that provide limited flood coverage. We've seen it with some carriers, but in areas that are more prone, you're most likely going to have a hard time getting that coverage from your standard carrier. Again, you have to go out and purchase a flood insurance policy. Flood insurance is very typical for people to buy in flood-prone areas. Of course, hurricanes cause lots of flooding. Look out for that and look out for flood coverage. Going back to the news about Hurricane Beryl and the interruption of power. Business income coverage is pretty typical of any business owner's policy, business income, business interruption, or a commercial package policy, or even a standalone or monoline commercial property policy, where you have coverage for your business personal property, your building, and then of course your business income. Now, business income will kick in the event of a covered loss. So there first has to be a peril. So let's say in this case it's a hurricane and there's wind. You sustain wind damage to the property. Now you can't operate out of that location as a business. The peril was the wind, so you have coverage for that. Now the business income would kick in and replace the losses that you have sustained because you cannot operate. Business income's tricky, and you have to make sure that you read your policy and understand if it's actual loss sustained, if there's a set limit, if there's a monthly indemnity, if there's co-insurance, if there's a waiting period. All that kind of stuff. I don't want to get too deep into it. I have other videos on my channel about business income particularly. Reading your policy, understanding your coverage is important. But one thing that's really, really important is that there's an endorsement that you have to add in most cases to cut policies for service utility business interruption, or utility service interruption, or off-premises power interruption. So this is in the case where the utility goes down, you don't get any power, right? That doesn't mean that you sustained a direct loss to your property. It means that you couldn't get power because of damage or loss sustained to the power utility company or whatever may be the reason. But there's a particular endorsement that you have to have that covers business income because of that type of peril. Because it's not a direct loss to your property, right? Talk to your insurance professional. Check your policy for utility service interruption coverage or off-premises power outage coverage. Really, really important in situations such as what we saw with Hurricane Beryl. The next coverage, the fourth one I want to talk about that you want to check for your business insurance, is debris removal endorsement. If you sustain a loss to your property, especially if it's something major, there's going to be debris. And debris has to be removed before you can rebuild or replace whatever was damaged at your property or your location. The debris removal endorsement is going to be really important because that's going to provide coverage for the company, the insurance company, to pay for that removal of the debris. Business owner policies, if you read through it, in a lot of cases, debris removal is part of a standard extension endorsement or a package of endorsements that you may get on the policy, but the limit may not be sufficient. Make sure you read your policy and understand what the coverage is for debris removal. The fifth endorsement I want to talk about is building ordinance or law. There's an endorsement for building ordinance or law coverage on the policy, which would pay for the added costs to rebuild if your building was damaged or your location was destroyed in a hurricane, based on local changes to the law and code, a local or updated building code. For older buildings, they may not be up to code. When it comes time to rebuild or replace because of an event such as a hurricane, you might have to come up to code, and there might be different laws, or your building might need to be built differently, and because of that, there's increased costs. You'll have to have building ordinance or law coverage or an endorsement on your policy to ensure that you're made whole in that type of situation. Next, I want to talk about spoilage coverage. So spoilage is an important endorsement to have on your policy, especially if you're in an industry that you deal with food or you have perishable goods, such as a restaurant. If there's a hurricane and there's a power outage and you lose your goods perish because you can't keep them cold or you can't keep them refrigerated, you would need to have spoilage coverage to replace that loss, to pay for the loss of those items or those goods. So make sure that you read your policy and understand what your spoilage coverage is. And the seventh and final coverage endorsement I want to speak to you about, which in some cases, this endorsement is already part of the policy, part of the business interruption coverage, or part of just the standard commercial property conditions, is civil authority coverage. Now, we saw this pretty widespread in the wildfires in California back in 2017, where local authorities force evacuations of areas because of, let's say in this case, it was a wildfire. In the case of in Houston, obviously it was a hurricane. They force evacuation and you can no longer access your business location. Civil authority coverage will be needed to kick in to replace losses or replace loss of business income. We saw this firsthand with the wildfires in Northern California of 2017. We had several clients that, even though their building wasn't directly destroyed or damaged because of the wildfires, they could not access the building. They could not get to the business. They could not run the business because authorities would not allow them to because of evacuation orders. Civil authority is a really important coverage to have. Again, read your policy, make sure it's in there. Understand the parameters when it came to business income. There's waiting periods. Sometimes they could be 72-hour waiting periods with civil authority. But make sure you understand, and waiting periods in a lot of cases are kind of act as a time deductible. Make sure you understand your coverage and understand if you have that, and if you don't, you need to speak to your insurance professional and endorse it onto the policy so that you're well protected. I hope this video was helpful. Speaking of Hurricane Beryl, hope everyone in the Houston, Texas area is safe. The power outages caused a lot of problem. Really concerning, especially during high heat and heat waves. But preparation is key. Make sure that you have the necessary goods that you would need if you can't leave your facility, you can't leave your home, or if you have a sustained power outage. But also to ensure that your insurance protection is proper, that you understand your insurance protection, so that if these events do occur, you know what you can regain from your carrier to submit your claim and what type of losses you can expect to recover in the event of such a disaster. If you guys have any questions, concerns, comments, comment directly here on my YouTube channel. I reply to all of them. I enjoy reading your comments and getting questions. You can also email hello@foagency.com if you have any particular questions about your insurance policy or your coverage. Or if you have any questions, you can call us at 858-384-1506. Happy to answer them. Again, I know we're here in California, but we do have many clients throughout the country, and we do have clients in hurricane-prone areas. Happy to talk to you about your coverage, your protection. To ensure you understand it, we can do a review to make sure that you have adequate protection. Thanks again for watching. Remember, give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and hope to see you another one soon. Take care.